Hello everyone, my name is Jay Santiago, and today I will be discussing my film review for First Contact. So a brief summary of the film. Filming takes place in the 1930s, and it recorded the interaction between the Aboriginal people of Papua New Guinea and Australian gold miners, in the context of providing interviews for Daniel and James Lee and various Aboriginal people, which provides perspectives and context of the past. So the entire film is in retrospective viewpoints in between two different groups of the Aboriginal people and primarily Daniel and James Lee, which, in accordance with Michael Lee, their older brother, set up this Australian gold mine post in New Guinea, and they um and they recorded how they were interacting with these people and what they did with each other in terms to ensure cooperation. So these main concepts that I focus on for the film, I focus on ethnocentrism primarily, and I thought from the first week in this political anthropology class, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to relate power into this film? And then I realized between these two Aboriginal groups that the Australian gold miners interacted with, there was like a very distinct viewpoint and mindset between these two groups. So for the first group, I talked about coercion and how the Australian gold mining team they displayed aspects of force in order to control their populace. I remember in one instance of the film where Michael Lee shot this boar, and I didn't understand how these guns work. So like they were trying to explain that if you stay with us and you don't cause any trouble, we won't use these guns on you. And they try to demonstrate the power of these guns by killing this pig, and it shocked the entire group. And for the second group, I discuss hegemony because they're trading. So this second group was much more, I would say, responsive or just more cooperative than the first group, and because of this, they actually willingly helped these Australian gold miners set up airstrips for their planes, and in return, they set up trading posts in which the Aboriginal people can trade some of their more traditional gear for, say, axes and stuff, so they can start using tools. I know particularly in one instance towards the beginning of the film, they use commercials, and this one commercial it was focused on, I think, the first group. And what happened is that this commercial kind of shined this light on the Aboriginal people. They were they were being titled as barbaric, and it was a good thing that the Australian people interact with them, because that means they were able to civilize them and, like I said before, and show cooperation. This kind of framework of ethnocentrism also it also is highlighted towards the end of the film as well, where this successful integration between the Aboriginal people and Australia was highlighted in the greatest summary ever, where the Aboriginal people they were actually witnessing these recordings of them 30 years prior, and it was amazing how throughout these interviews you start to catch cues of like how this interaction kind of molded their culture. From previous interactions, this film that showed that they were barely wearing any clothes, and now they're wearing full civilian clothes. They're wearing jeans. They're wearing actual shirts now. And interestingly, their reaction to these past films was intriguing as well, because it shown that they thought previously they looked ridiculous. They were wondering how did we ever how did we look so weird now that like they've become more accustomed to like these newly emplaced social structures and like ideas of how they should behave. Seeing how they were previously was such a contradiction to how they are now, and that was really surprising to me, because that just showed the how power, especially from a nation state such as Australia, can so profoundly impact a previously untouched culture. Um, and then for my relevant readings, I discussed one particular one from chapter, no, from Week 1, Global Custom Regimes and the Traffic of Sovereignty, written by Brenda Chalfin. So this one particular quote really stuck to me, and it essentially outlined the entire film for me. The quote goes, "Despite the challenges posed by the juggernaut of capitalism's advance, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the nation-state remains a profoundly consistent institutional form that continues to serve as the prevailing unit of geological power." So if you break down this quote, from my perspective, I analyze it as capitalism's advance equals the Australian gold rush. And this advance was able to exert their power over this Aboriginal people in order to meet a goal. And because of this, they traveled to Papua New Guinea, so in turn entails the geological power they're able to, as a capitalistic government, they were able to move into New Guinea, either A, from the first group, exert power, or B, enable trade in the terms to like persuade the people to help them. But I guess you could say for both groups it was also kind of hegemonistic, in which no matter it was either through trade or through force, it was like a persuasive tactic in order to ensure cooperation. And it shows that this institutional form, so the Australian government, was able to manipulate the people, but also at the same time foster a new kind of mixed model culture in which was able to promote A, economic profit, and B, just we'll stick with economic profit for now, but at the same time, it's just this very profound, touching interaction between the Australian gold mines and the Aboriginal people forever change the structure of their culture, and in hindsight also provides interesting insight on how they acted before. And it almost seems that like this economic drive for the Australian government to go and interact with these people was, in my perspective, almost both positive and negative, in terms of A, at least they know that like other people besides them exist, and they can kind of like drop this ethnocentric viewpoint of other people and are able to interact with others in a society, but at the same time it kind of like dilutes their heritage and puts it in a negative light. And for some personal reflections of the film, I thought it was interesting. It was much more interesting to actually see the footage and see how people interacted with each other instead of like reading about it. So having a visualization was very important, and I'm very grateful for that. It might be a complaint for some, but I actually appreciated the aesthetic of the film. I like the fact that like it was very grainy and it gave like this like real raw footage, and it just made the film seem much more authentic. And I thought that, regardless of my previous comments, I felt that the film shined a more not positive, but an objective light on both viewpoints. It showed both positive and negative reactions of both the brothers and like specific people of the Aboriginal groups, and I thought that was very important because anthropology in itself is not meant to demonize people or to alienate them. So it was interesting to see that kind of that collaboration between the two. And overall, I thought the film was very great and very informative for only being an hour long. And yeah, there's my presentation for the First Contact film review, and I hope my classmates can leave a comment and so we can discuss more. Thank you.